Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got Mac.
What's good?
Unfortunately, Gio is not able to join us today, but don't worry, when he does return, he will have a new appearance for you guys. And of course, today we'll be covering the action from match week 3 of the Premier League. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter or X and Instagram. Our handle is at House of_Footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email as well. houseoffooty@hotmail.com is our email. We love hearing from you guys, so be sure to get involved, guys. But let's dive straight into the action. Of course, one of the surprising results after the way it started, Mac. You're right. Newcastle won, Liverpool 2. You're right in terms of the result, but I think we can all agree in saying that Newcastle should have won this game. Give us your overall thoughts on this game, please.
Absolutely chaotic. It's what we had thought going into the game. It gave us what we expected, but in ways that we never would have anticipated. Lovely action, great match of football. I think overall, it's weird because I would take a lot of positives out from both teams. I understand Newcastle did lose the game, but agree. I think up to let's say the 80th minute, they were by far the better team. I know that, of course, they did have the advantage of playing with an extra man for quite a bit. But aside from some Allison heroics, Almiron missing a couple sitters, this game is completely different. And the game is signed, sealed, deliver. Prior to Nunez doing the cameo of his version of Starboy, I think you would say, right? Is that how you put it?
Yes.
But
Yes,
overall, lovely game of action, and it definitely is emblematic of what the Premier League is about and why it's the most popular league in the world for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go back to sort of our predictions again. I predicted a Newcastle win, which looked like it was gonna be for sure a win. Low scoring, you could say, but yeah. At the end, though, it looks like Newcastle. I'm not even sure. It was sort of two quick attacks by Liverpool that really turned the game on its head. But Newcastle did control a lot of that. But let's go straight to some of the early action from the game, Mac. Trent, of course, receiving an early yellow card for, I guess, delay of game, which is very common now with the Premier League introducing these new rules. Not long after that, goes on to shove Anthony Gordon onto the ground, which a lot of fans, of course, at the stadium were questioning why that's not a second yellow card. The commentators were commenting on that as well. Personally, I would have felt it would have been a little harsh. But of course, there's always that question. Do you have a quick comment on that at all, Mac? If at all, for that, I guess, situation?
I think in a 2 minute span, maybe more than 2 minutes, a couple minute span, you saw the worst of what refereeing can be like because why Trent Alexander-Arnold threw the ball when he was kind of initially given his yellow was because Anthony Gordon did foul him, right? There was no question about that, but the ref didn't call it. Trent was frustrated, threw the ball, but then the ref went ahead and made the right call and by giving him a yellow because that is clearly by what the law is now. It's a little borderline, but it's been in practice and a lot of other players have probably experienced a worse reaction in that situation. In regards to the second opportunity, that's a clear yellow as I've seen because he has no intention to play the ball. He's just delaying a counterattack. That's in the rule book as a yellow card. But because of the situation, it was taken away, which for me, I'll probably look a little bit differently than you. That's clear setting off, even more so than a setting off, which we'll get to later, in my opinion, because of the situation. It's just because of the timing, which is unfair from a Newcastle perspective, because that was really the only thing from anyone's viewpoint of why it wouldn't be a yellow, in my opinion. So I think it's a little bit rough there, and Trent should have definitely been the first Liverpool player to be sent off in that game.
I agree. I think with the way if those two are separate situations that happen, maybe even 10 minutes after each other,
Yeah.
two yellow cards given, I don't see a problem with that at all. But of course, we're going to move on to another situation that does happen later in the game. But of course, Trent being that focal point again, his mistake leads to the Newcastle goal. Of course, Anthony Gordon gets on to enter that miscontrolled pass and puts it away. And he started the season very, very well. That new number 10 jersey for him. And of course, he's going to be, I think, the big thing going forward for Newcastle. Any quick comments on how Anthony Gordon has impressed you or not impressed you so far, Mac?
Well, thus far, he's taking to since the beginning of the season, because he was talking about it in some interviews after the game where he arrived at Newcastle, not in the greatest shape, picking up a knock, and wasn't really able to round into form. Beginning of the season, he's been arguably one of their best players, one of the most important players. His ability to be able to get in behind, get on the counter has been absolutely vital. And you can see what he's able to bring to this team. The tough part being is in this individual game, given his career, starting off from the academy in Liverpool, then of course going to Everton. This is probably, if you're from a Liverpool fan's perspective, the worst player that you would want to have score on you in that situation. So it's tough for them, but great credit to him because it shows his character where there's a lot of things that he's been through and a lot of eyes that were looked at negatively, I would argue fairly so, but he's able to adjust, rebalance, start the season off very well. Hopefully it does for himself. It continues because he is the type of player that can bring excitement to a team and is definitely kind of a game breaker in some situations that this Newcastle was needed on the left wing when St. Maximin's 13 different cutbacks wasn't working last season.
I mean, hey, he's done well so far, of course. Started very, very well. Was giving Trent the runaround all game and looks like he's going to be, of course, one of their focal points going forward this season. And yeah, Liverpool went down 1-0, and then of course the red card situation that I know we're not really here to talk about refereeing decisions too much, Mac, but I think it's very fair for us to discuss this. First and foremost, I think the referee is very brave. I'm not sure if I put that in our sort of group chat. I think it's a very brave decision, and I actually do think it is the right decision. If he's not taken, it was Isaac. He's not taken out by Van Dijk in that situation. Goal scoring chance should be a red card. I don't have a problem with that. I do want to give props to the referee because if I was the referee, I may have shown a yellow. And then in that case, I don't think VAR will overturn so they don't have the ability to go into the monitor and overturn that. But if he does give a red, then sort of he's making that decision. And if VAR decides to ask him to review it, that's fine. But I don't think that's the case that happened. And actually, great call at that time. And spot on. That's pretty much all I have to say for that. What were your thoughts?
When I first saw it live, my initial reaction was yellow. My first initial reaction was yellow, and I thought that's what it would be. But then watching it like the third, fourth, fifth time, given that there is no secondary Liverpool player to potentially stop Isak from going in on a break, and he was one-on-one in that situation, that touch was being taken away from Van Dijk, so it wasn't as if they're shoulder to shoulder. And looking at the contact, he makes contact with the ball, but he goes through both of Isak's feet first. So I would agree with you 100% it was the right call. It's tough, though, from a Liverpool fan's perspective, where you kind of wish, in some ways, you wish that was in your own penalty box, because if that's in a penalty box, that's not a red in that same situation. It would have been the double jeopardy. It would have been a penalty and a yellow, for sure. So if a couple yards go one way, you're up, still have 11 men, you're down a goal, but I think that in some situations you might take that considering the timing of the game and the scoreline of the game, where you would fancy yourself still to get back into it. Eventually did anyway, but that's neither here nor there. So it's tough there. I think the referee made the right decision. So I love that you described that as brave, because it was, and it was correct.
Yeah, because honestly, I mean, I wouldn't be as brave as that referee, but I think he got it right. And because it's a red card, it's not really influenced by, I guess, VAR as much, because they don't have to. They just have to look at it by, is it a clear mistake, which I don't think it was. And rightly so, Virgil van Dijk is sent off. Newcastle gone to dominate the game, of course, with an extra player on the field. They have chances to put it away, but I felt like they did very, very well. You brought it up in our preview, their midfield with Tonali, Guimaraes, and Joelinton. Very, very physical midfield that looked like they were just beating all of these Liverpool midfielders, are playing with them, bullying them around. Of course, Endo had to be taken off, I think, early on into the second half, but of course, McAllister and Szoboszlai weren't the greatest on the ball when they were on the pitch, until, of course, the Darwin Nunez show starts. He does come on and scores 2 goals late into the second half after the 80th minute mark. And of course, we all know now that Liverpool were able to steal the win in this situation. And really, I don't think it was deserved, but as a Liverpool fan, I just have to be happy with that. What were your takes, I guess, on what this means for Liverpool or Newcastle with this result?
Again, for Newcastle, I don't want to get too down on them because if you look at a snapshot for the first 80th minute, they played very, very well. They were well deserved their advantage. Were the much better team in terms of expected goals. Were far superior than Liverpool. Again, if Alisson doesn't make that save off of Almiron, where that one for me, arguably right now, is leading contender, number one with a bullet for save of the season, where he's able to just be able to touch it onto the post from that half volley inside the box. Absolutely phenomenal. No, it was a full volley. I apologize. And then Almiron misses a sitter as well, and then also hits the post. It was the perfect Almiron game in some ways for me, where he looked phenomenal, kind of gliding past players, but at the same time, just sometimes misses that little bit of finesse, that little bit of finish in the final third. But it shows the character of Liverpool, where it was a never say die attitude, where at that 80th minute, it's like, hey, we're only down one. We haven't kind of capitulated through this. We're going to be able to bring in character. We're going to bring in effort, and we're going to press the hell out of this Newcastle team because they've been in control of this game. They're not used to this pressure anymore. Let's do this and see if we can be able to get something. They do. I think it comes off of Botman's ass, and then Nunez probably hits one of the cleanest strikes you would want from a striker. That wasn't a half chance. That was, looking at it, it probably looked easier, but from that position, from that ankle, how hard he hits it low off the post, phenomenal strike. Lovely to see from him, and hopefully it's potentially be. And if it is what you want to happen, especially Ray, this could be a turning point in type of a career that he could have for Liverpool, because this type of result coming in, being the major difference, definitely going to be seeing songs about that, because it's type of performance where you kind of ingratiate yourself to a fan base, where you're the difference between your team losing and winning. You score two phenomenal goals, great finishes on both of them. Lovely to see, as well as it is. I know a lot of people say Fergie time, but it's really, I think, more so hot take, Liverpool time, because that's their 42nd time that Liverpool have scored a 90th minute winner in a game in the Premier League. So that's the most in Premier League history. So it's Liverpool doing what they do, maybe a little bit too chaotic for some of your elderly fans' hearts out there, but absolutely phenomenal, and definitely character. I think, though, it'll be interesting to see what this will do for Liverpool in their next game, because, again, without Van Dijk, you're asking more questions now. Konate was out injured. Matip had to come in and start this game. Mm-hmm. So even though Liverpool come out with the win, I feel like you have more questions for them going forward. But for Newcastle coming out with the loss, I feel like you have a good foundation of what you want to be able to do. They started the same 11 for the first 3 games in a row. The first time they've done it, I think, since like 2011 or something like that, if I remember correctly. So it just seems like Eddie Howe has a consistent favorite team. They play well. Can they clean up their chances and finish them? This is a team to be reckoned with this year for sure.
Yeah, and there were spells of time, spells of possession for Newcastle where even those midfield three were just knocking it around the Liverpool three, and it looks like it's going to be a positive thing for Newcastle. Of course, the result not being the greatest, but still, as well for Liverpool, the result is great, and I think we're going to touch on this a little bit more when we talk about Man U. The result is great, but a lot of problems still to fix, especially with, of course, the red card and how the manner that Liverpool went down and weren't really able to do much immediately after that. But that pretty much wraps up this part for Newcastle Liverpool. Let's move on to another game, Mac, one that you may be following closer. Arsenal 2, Fulham 2. Initial reactions, how big are these 2 drop points for Arsenal? Mac, what do you think?
I don't think it's monumental because, of course, 2 drop points, that's unfortunate. Early on in the season, well, we're not going to touch on this team later, but there is still only one perfect team in the Premier League, and that's Manchester City, who were fortunate in their result to come up with all 3 points. So it is a step backwards, but there's a lot of aspects of the performance that, from an Arsenal fans' perspective, that you would really like. They were good in possession. They created a lot of opportunities. They just probably played a stout team defensively, and I would argue Paulinho's, his best performance in a Fulham shirt was in this game. What he did defensively is be able to close down space. So it's tough there. However, a lot of the fan base definitely is going to ask questions about, okay, is Arteta overthinking this? Because if you notice in the first goal that Saka gives up the ball, kind of sets Fulham in on through, where in that situation, it would have been Saliba in that spot where he's passing back to, versus Ben White's looking to an overlap. Partey's already in the center of the pitch. So you have empty green pasture for not just, in that case, it looked like one Fulham player to run onto. There was a few. So it seemed like there was an isolated opportunity where, okay, teams are going to, okay, if Partey's going to shift in from a right back position, Ben White wants to get in the overlap. There's a lot of green space there for teams to be able to get at. So it'll be interesting to see, is there going to be adjustments? I understand why he's trying to play this different style because now you have a rotation potentially of Partey playing as a wide back, tucking in. So then if Zinchenko's hurt, then you still have an alternative option to play the type of formation that you want to. It brings Havertz in, as well as later on down the road when you need squad rotation. Now you have potentially both from the right side and the left side of defense, someone that could tuck in and play in the midfield. But they're still working out those fine tunes. They're still kind of getting into form of what they need to be able to play. In this game, they dominated this game for a large section of it, and Fulham were fortunate, in my opinion, to be able to come out with a point. But they're not there yet. They're not the final piece of the puzzle. So even though I was saying, and to your point earlier, both with Liverpool and Manchester United, great result. A lot of questions I still ask about how the team's going to go going forward. Arsenal, I feel like we have a lot of the answers. We know what they're going to do. This result just didn't match up with their type of performance of what they would generally have. So even though they've dropped points here, it seemed like, again, going into this game, I understand what they're trying to do, and going forward in the final third, if they clean a couple things up, not make one or two mistakes, they're walking out probably with the 3 or 4-0 win. It's just kind of sometimes how the cookie crumbles in the Premier League when you're playing teams that just need that one opportunity, or in this case, two, of course.
Without a doubt, Arsenal dominated. Almost 20 shots in total, over 70% possession, and yeah, like you said, if it wasn't for unfortunate early goal that they concede, which really has them kind of chasing the game, which I don't think would have been too far apart from what they originally set out to do: dominate possession, create chances. It wasn't really. I think they did have chances, but from the highlights that I was able to watch, a lot more happened when Fabio Vieira came on. Him, of course, the creator for the man who's brought down for the penalty, and then the creator for the Nketiah second goal, which great assist there. I think when I came across some of the reactions online, there weren't a lot of Arsenal fans were a little bit peeved at Havertz's performance, and of course the comparison that you have with Vieira coming on and doing so well in such a short period of time as opposed to Havertz, who did start the game. What are your thoughts on how these two players will they be battling it out for a position per se, or is it maybe are we looking too much into Havertz's performance in this game? Was it a one-off game? What do you think that dynamic will look like for Arsenal going forward?
I think you are absolutely correct in terms of the idea would be that these two are battling out for the same type of position. I would argue that they're both in rotation. If, let's say, Odegaard drops or is injured, then you'll see both of them play in that type of position where it's really the three of them for those two spots. Odegaard has his nailed down. The decision really is between Havertz and Fabio Vieira. I think the interesting part would be is in their next matchup against Manchester United, against the bigger teams, is he going to play this? Is Arteta going to play his team this aggressively, or is he going to revert back to where he's going to kind of have the two holding midfielders and play with more of a traditional back four? In that matchup, I wouldn't be surprised if we, especially with Jesus back, if we don't see either Havertz or Fabio Vieira in this next game. But I think both of them are kind of up for it. Fabio Vieira has a little bit more time in the system because he didn't go out alone last year with this Arsenal team. He played the full season, understanding his role, kind of what Arteta expects him, versus Havertz is playing a whole new position he has not played in his senior career thus far. I think he has more quality. I think if you ask in terms of who has better individual skills, maybe he doesn't show it in the MLS skills competition. But if you would ask me who I think is a better overall player, it would be Havertz. But he needs more time to adjust. The tough part is that he has someone nipping at his heels and a tough matchup next week. So if we don't see Havertz or Fabio Vieira start next week, a whole lot could happen 2 weeks from now when they're playing against Everton, where who knows who may have that starting 11 spot. Because, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he reverts back to something more defensive, similar to that Man City Community Shield game, and then going forward against these smaller teams where he's able to kind of know that he's going to walk in, Arteta's going to walk in with 80% possession, you see a little bit more kind of fluid rotation of who's in the squad. So, but I do completely agree with you in regards to this individual game. The before and after moment was Fabio Vieira coming on. So it's easy to pick at Havertz for it because that's the common denominator of who left the pitch. But I think that's a little bit too much of a discredit to Havertz, and not accurately, I would say, giving the credit to Fabio Vieira because he did play very, very well. However, for a large section of his Arsenal career thus far, he's been kind of the Havertz, the guy picked on because whenever he has started, he's come off, someone else has come on and has been his replacement, and then the team's done better. So I think it's too soon to say, but for me, I do bank on that it's going to be a 50-50 split for them going forward in that spot.
Yeah, and we said that, guys. Of course, Arsenal fans, if you guys are listening, we said it. Be patient with Havertz. Of course, he just come off of the horrible season with Chelsea, to say the least, and of course, learning a new system, which there's going to be a lot of eyes on him. But um, still early in the season, I don't expect too much to sort of change in terms of his priority on Arteta's, I guess, list.
Yep.
But it just begs the question because, of course, different profiles of teams that you're facing might call for different tactics and different things to sort of bring on to the pitch, especially now Gabriel Jesus is back, likely starting, though Nketiah did get on the score sheet. So that is another positive thing for Arsenal. But overall, still early in the season, and a point gained is of course not the worst thing in the world. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up our first part of the podcast, Max. So let's take a quick break here, and then we'll be back with some more Premier League action to talk about. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our coverage of match day 3 of the Premier League. The next game we're going to cover now is Brighton 1, West Ham 3. Well, Brighton, of course, will definitely feel hard luck on their end, not getting a positive result in a game which they dominated, which we kind of predicted. But we do have to give props to David Moyes, masterclass of a tactical game. Of course, a lot of luck and everything really, that all of their goals really had to be perfect in a counterattacking sense. But I guess, Mac, walk us through your initial thoughts on both the, I guess, West Ham and Brighton perspective of this game.
So predictions in terms of how this game would work out. I feel like we got everything right. Brighton being in control, West Ham playing on the counterattack. Things could go well for either team. Who knows? Very interesting game. Kind of a split between play styles. We don't know what will happen. We got everything right except for the scoreline. At least for myself, I picked 3-1 for Brighton to be able to win this game. But again, that's as I said earlier, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes in the Premier League. But I do think, I think it's a key point in terms of David Moyes. I know we may want to touch on some players in terms of their individual games, of how well they played in terms of matchups as well. But full credit to David Moyes, because tactically, I think he's probably been one of the first managers where you look at a one-on-one battle between him and De Zerbi, where he came out on top. Where a lot of the time, if you watch West Ham's attack, it was exclusively down the left-hand side. It was, we're trying to get in behind the century-old James Milner, and we want to be able to pick on the weaker center back of Adam Webster instead of going towards the dunk area on the other side. So you could consistently see like Saïd Benrahma, you saw Mikel Antonio, when they're making a run, they want to peel off that side and try to see if they can win a one-on-one duel there and kind of have the domino effect of Brighton players being out of position on other aspects of the pitch. And you saw that in their first goal, and you saw that in their second goal, clear as day, where ball comes in, Antonio is able to win it off of Webster, shaky 50-50, slips Ward-Prowse in, great, well, decent finish, I'll give him that. But then more so in Jared Bowen's goal, where Antonio plays it long to Benrahma, and Bowen crashes the box, wants it more than Estupiñán, who does not notice him, does not come back, and is able to have a very good, clean finish. And it wasn't just one time, it was several times, them attacking that left-hand side. In terms of possession, I think you just mentioned it in between breaks here, where Brighton had almost 80% possession. However, expected goals for West Ham was 3 to 1.5. So they were dominant in terms of creating chances, quality chances for their team, because they had a good game plan from David Moyes. So definitely in terms of people worrying about if David Moyes is going to keep his job this year, I think he should be lowered on those betting odds, because he seems to be in a very good position with his team buying in, his players buying in, and of course now the fan base buying in with the result like this.
Yeah, of course. West Ham, 2 wins and a draw, and to open their season. What kind of, you'd have to be crazy as an owner to let him go at this point. Even though it might not look the prettiest on the pitch, we do have to give them credit for how well they and organized they've been. And of course, we have to, I think, myself at the very least, have to give an apology to Mikel Antonio, who was immense in this game. Of course, showed a lot of that in the Chelsea game as well. But as a lone striker up there, holding play and just being a nuisance up front against teams, to put it rather simply, players at the back who just want to keep the ball and not looking to get stuck in. I'm sorry for you guys, but Mikel Antonio is going to give you a battle, and that's exactly what he did in those involvements. And of course, himself getting onto the end of pretty much creating his last goal, the one where he's able to turn his defender, hit it far post, giving me flashbacks, maybe just for myself, but giving me prime Didier Drogba flashbacks where he can just take his player on, even it's not the most clear opportunity, puts it away, and does everything very, very effectively, and of course with pace and of course power up front. So give props to that. And of course the goal that you also mentioned, the second goal where Bowen gets in behind Stupinian. That touch, I know I mentioned it in our group chat. That touch at that speed to bring it down and that finish, class. Of
Yes.
course, Jared Bowen, we know he is a one of the better Premier League players, but it just has to go unnoticed. And of course, we have to bring it up that he has that ability, and they're gonna be very reliant on him moving forward with the season. Of course, him and Mikel Antonio are going to be heavily involved with whatever positive comes from West Ham. But gotta be honest with you, they have been quite impressive so far. Look like a team that's not going to be easy to beat at the very least. And with Mohamed Kudus, who has been confirmed now joining that team, if he does start on the left-hand side, or if it's Benrahma, or he does play more centrally, that's going to be an interesting attack moving forward for West Ham. And so I guess for you, Mac, what does this mean for either team? Should Brighton be sort of deflated after this result, or do you expect them to bounce back? And also, I guess at the same time, what do you think about West Ham's amazing start to the season, which was a complete opposite last season?
I think for both teams, you got to look at them as, I would say, in terms of your breaking down tiers of the Premier League, they're right just under kind of that big six tier, in my opinion, in terms of the quality, in terms of the tough matchups. I think West Ham is always going to do better against these kind of teams that are more dominant in possession, because that's their bread and butter. That's their game plan. It'll be very interesting to see when they're playing teams that want to do kind of the West Ham to them, want to sit back, absorb pressure, play on the counter. Can we see West Ham create in the final third in that manner and with having the ball in possession? I think that more so will be their challenge, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to them, because their next game, funny enough, to be honest, when I first looked at the crest, I could not tell. It's still Luton. That's a matchup where they should be expected to have a lot of the ball, a lot of possession. Can they create? Can they be able to create opportunities at the same time? Make sure they themselves are not hurt on the counter, on break, because I would argue their defense, they're big guys, big, strong, smart players, but are not the quickest. So if you're playing against a striker that we even say in some cases like Mikel Antonio, and were to do against them, they could be in some tough shake. So it'll be interesting to see how they are going forward. I think they're a little bit more iffy for me than Brighton, whereas Brighton, it's clear as day. It's an unfortunate result. They played well. Again, they were able to create a lot of chances themselves. I feel like it's tough because the transfer window is wrapping up in a couple of days. They should have the money, because if they just brought in a couple more reinforcements, I don't mean to throw shade on James Milner, but if he's your starting right back week in, week out in the Premier League, it's a tough spot, especially a lot of these left wingers are very, very difficult to play against. So I think that if they had a little bit more reinforcements, we could push them up into their towards the table conversation. But a result like this shows that there is arrows you can kind of pick at. There is little chinks in the armor that you can work through. So it'll be interesting if they have any last second adjustments, but overall, still a very good team. Lovely brand of football. Love Billy Gilmore. So all positive on Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, the cameo that I saw from Gilmore bossing things in the midfield. The only concern I do have for Brighton is just, a lot of players, new players blending in. Still see Danny Welbeck starting for this Brighton team, which, no disrespect, Danny Welbeck. I think safe to say there are other options that Brighton could go for in this at this day and age. And I mean, there's still a relatively new team that gets basically pillaged every offseason. So it's just, I guess, a matter of time before Zerbi picks his best 11, which likely won't include James Milner at right back. And of course, going forward, we expect them to continue to even outpossess most teams and even get close to outpossessing, the traditional top six when they do face them. So that's going to be an interesting matchup there. One of the funniest things, though, that I saw this weekend, Mac, is, of course, on Twitter, a Man U fan berating Harry Maguire. Nothing new here, but he said, Harry Maguire is a coward for not leaving Man U, and he could have been actually captaining this West Ham team, who are currently second in the Premier League. And of course, we're gonna go on to talk about Man U, who themselves did not start this game well. Of course, the Man U game did finish 3-2 in favor of Man U, but they were down 2-0 within the first 5 minutes. Defensively, a lot of problems there. Again, that they will definitely need to work on. Doesn't look great, but at home and with the quality that they do have, they did end up scraping the win at home to Nottingham Forest, and a lot of people I think are gonna be looking at this result. You know what? It's great, we won, but I think there's definitely questions for what Man U is doing, what Ten Hag has planned for them, and if he can actually execute this definitely this season. Because there are some reinforcements that he has already brought on, and so there will be questions about him doing that. What were your takes on this game, though, Mac?
I think Manchester United were probably the most fortunate team to come up this weekend because their performance did not justify all 3 points. A lot of players on that pitch, in my opinion, the Casemiros, I know he did get on the score sheet, even the Martinez, players of that ilk. For me, they were soft, they were weak, they lacked a lot of desire. If Nottingham Forest had a little bit more quality about them, and you would think because given how many players that they've signed over the last couple of years, they would have a decent number kind of starting 11 there, but a little bit of more quality in the final third. Manchester United could have been down 4 or 5 goals very, very quickly. They were just fortunate they were playing against a poor team where those opportunities weren't kind of actually realized on the score sheet. So by the time Manchester United got into the game, fortunate to be able to kind of get back in the game. That first goal from Ericsson, you can kind of see the momentum shifting, but they were already 30 minutes into the game almost of playing so poorly that against any of the other teams in the Premier League, against at least many of the other teams in the Premier League, they would have been down by much more. So I think they're fortunate that way that a lot of their players can kind of ghost in, play very soft, and it gives me the feeling of even though they won this game, it's like and it'll be very interesting because Gio and I will be pitted against each other as you're like going into the next game against Arsenal and Manchester United, where it seems like this Manchester United team, and in some ways Arsenal as well, both are a little bit soft, where they can be got at. There are aspects of the team that are very, very weak. I would argue that Arsenal played better thus far this year, but Manchester United, like I said, fortunate to get out the result, but you can get at this team. There's a lot of weakness. There's a lot of hole. That midfield needs a lot of work. I would argue, aside from Rashford and Antony, who played well, still can't finish for his life. There wasn't really many positives in terms of this pitch on the pitch for Manchester United. So I leave asking a lot of questions after this game because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And considering that it's a full off season, second one for Ten Hag, he's gotten the players you want. You would hope the team would have a kind of a basis standard of commitment, of style, of what they want to be able to do on the pitch. But there's been so much shifting in and out of different ways to approach games where I don't know what to expect from them. So it's tough to see actual progression.
No, I agree with sort of what you're mentioning about the overall team, of course. And this happened last season as well. The quality that Rashford brings and the moments that Bruno can pick out a good pass, a good finish. Those moments, though they are happening less regularly, they're gonna Man U is heavily reliant on those moments of magic that these two players can provide, which is not a great sign for Ten Hag going forward. They do have Mason Mount injured and out for at least the next couple of weeks. Of course, Luke Shaw as well will be out for quite a while, it looks like. And so those injuries, of course, they do have Hodgland coming in later in the season, but still doesn't look like the game plan that at least Ten Hag wanted to implement at the start of the season has been working. And they do have a tough test coming up next week when they do face Arsenal. So I'm interested to see sort of what they do. And at this point, it looks like there is a lot of unfinished business in that Man U team. They had to start Ericsson next to Casemiro, which I think at this point, most Man U fans, pretty much all Man U fans, were not expecting to see that as a starting two anytime this season. And of course, Amrabat links are still there. And of course, they're going to try to look to see if they can improve, maybe get another midfielder in. And at the same time, Luke Shaw will be out for a long period of time. And I just had to bring up some of the names that they were linked with, the likes of Marco Corella, Marcos Alonso, and Sergio Reguilon. I mean, they are in a tough situation, but these are not the types of players that you're looking in, I think, no disrespect to them, to fill in a spot for you in a season where, you haven't started that great. A lot of eyes are going to be in that position for sure, especially if you're lacking a lot of defensive solidity. And so, what are your thoughts on some of the potential players that they can bring in, and what does Man U look to do before the transfer window closes?
The names you've read out to me aren't ringing endorsements. They don't bring a sense of joy if I'm a Manchester United fan. It's like, yes, Marcos Alonso is the solution to our left back problems. No. That's a cause of more heartache, pain, and suffering if you're a Manchester United fan. There doesn't seem, in terms of the squad refresh, it's been great that like players like Nunez come in. It's great that Mason Mount come in. They're both younger players that you can see a lot of potential build up to, but it's not enough. They need more. And I think that, but for me, after the game, a lot of a lot of Manchester United fans, I think there's almost 7,000, stayed behind at Old Trafford to protest the Glazers wanting them out because the sale has still not gone through. I think the tough part is you're not going to see higher quality players, higher name players that Manchester United fans would be excited about brought in to en masse of what this squad needs. Instead of just the 1 to 2, they need potentially 5 signings over the course of a transfer window, maybe 2 or 3 rotations for a full year in terms of transfer windows separately to get where they want to be able to go, because this squad is very, very thin. This is similar to last year's in a lot of ways, where if Rashford gets hurt, it's almost lost cause there, because they're kind of, and as you mentioned, Bruno, if something happens to one of them, they're bereft of options offensively, it feels like. And one of my favorite stats, I think, I don't have the exact number, but I think if you combine the appearances of both Jadon Sancho and Antony, they have combined fewer goals and assists than Pepe did for Arsenal, who they're trying to get rid of. So if you look at the quality of player or drop-off you're getting, it's not a good look. So I think overall this squad definitely needs a lot more, and we'll get more into the Glazer, unfortunately. But in terms, those names are not it. This squad needs more for sure.
Yeah,
and also, if Dalot's starting as your left back, who Cristiano Ronaldo said is the future of right backs in the world, we got issues here. Okay, this is not great. This is not great.
I mean, he simply can't replace Aaron Wan-Bissaka in that right back position, so he's gonna have to play somewhere else. But of course, I mean, like you said, the takeover looks like it won't be happening anytime soon. And so even if they do have that takeover soon, nothing's really going to change, and you don't want to be in a position where you are the Nottingham Forest team in the Premier League, where you're just bringing in 5-10 players every transfer window, because that's not going to really help your situation. So we'll definitely see what happens with that. And so I guess just to round up the podcast for today, Mac, I thought we'll go around and pick out a game or two that really stood out to you from this weekend. And of course, I'm going to have to, so I'll start because of course we didn't really discuss this pre-podcast, but I wanted to bring up the Spurs game, Spurs against Bournemouth game. Spurs with another win, impressive back-to-back wins for Spurs under Postecoglou. Madison on score sheet, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he was on score sheet and looks like a bright player bright signing for Spurs. One thing I did want to mention, though, one of the players that I think is not benefiting as much, even though you would expect him to benefit a lot from Kane's sale, is Richarlison. You'd expect he's the new starting number 9.
He's so bad.
Him to be
Sorry.
in the goals with that sort of quality around him. Not looking great, and so it's great for Spurs that they are getting the wins, but you might be looking at you might be asking questions about Richarlison moving forward if he's gonna be putting in those types of performances without Kane there anymore, and he's the focal point. So that's just one of the games that I want to bring up. But is there a game that you wanted to bring up and any points that you want to make?
15 seconds on Spurs. I completely agree. Madison looks to be pulling off the string. Postecoglou seems to have the system adjusting. I love the midfield of Sarr and Bissouma. Richarlison is so bad as a striker that he actually blocked Son from getting a tap in at one point. So lovely to see, perfect on brand for Richarlison. But to continue on to a game, I'm going to pick a different team from London. Pick a team with Chelsea because I understand it was against Luton. I understand. Let's not get too excited, but it was nice to see Chelsea getting back into form a little bit. Sterling playing well. It's nice to see kind of him getting the shine he deserves because with so many kind of such rotation in terms of players coming in and out, he's kind of been left as an afterthought. Whereas I feel like he's a very quality player, brings a lot to a team in the Premier League. Even the first goal was kind of what you would see, I would argue, a lot more at Liverpool back in the day, coming off from the right wing, kind of feeling free to be able to shuffle between one or two players and being able to go in for a nice finish. So great to see he still has that in the locker. And hopefully going forward, we'll be able to see more of that. And this Chelsea team, again, I know it's against Luton, so let's relax. But it's great to see them come out with a solid performance, and it looks like there is a semblance of a team, a semblance of an idea, and at least a level of maturity in terms of how to play Premier League football that Pochettino's brought back to Chelsea. Again, early days. We'll see if this continues. I'm generally, as of right now, I'm giving everyone like a free hit against Luton. I know I'm setting up myself potentially for Arsenal to lose both games against Luton. I'm giving everyone a free hit against Luton. Good, got 3 points. Have fun.
Yeah, I mean, Luton, not no disrespect to them, but they're gonna be happy to be playing and putting in great performances against all of these Premier League sides, and so we don't, I guess, expect too much from them. But I do hope that they, for their fans, put in some good performances, pick up some points here, maybe be the team that Premier League teams don't want to face, and it's not a free hit every time you face them. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I do agree with Chelsea. What you mentioned about Chelsea, they're interesting because a lot of players still meshing with that squad. But if those signs from Sterling and your Nicholas Jacksons, and I think Enzo Fernandez played quite well as well, are to sort of foreshadow what's going to happen for Chelsea next, fans should be looking more positively at what the season could hold for them, of course, with Nkunku coming back later in the season. So yeah, pretty much this concludes our podcast for today, guys. If you guys like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Wednesday when we preview the next weekend's Premier League games. But on that note, Mac, peace out.
I miss Gio, the big Bleach fan.
Yes, sir. Gio, we'll see you soon. Take care, guys.